Hey there, welcome to Life Noggin. You know, when we think of animals that live in coral reefs, we usually think of colorful fish darting around, maybe some turtles or dolphins. We don't really think about the coral themselves as being animals. But did you know that corals are actually colonies of animals called polyps? These tiny animals have been on Earth for over 500 million years, so they've definitely stood the test of time. However, recently, these organisms have been facing a large-scale die-off due to climate change. And it all starts with one major change: rising ocean temperatures. As you may already know, coral bleaching happens when the symbiotic algae living inside the coral, called zooxanthellae, leave the coral. The coral then turns white because without their algae friends, their color goes away. While this doesn't mean the coral is dead, it does mean that its survival is in jeopardy. Without the algae, they can't make their own food through photosynthesis and will eventually starve. Now, you might be thinking this sounds kind of familiar. You've heard of coral bleaching before, but what does that have to do with rising ocean temperatures? Well, rising ocean temperatures are making the waters too hot for these little guys. So the algae, which are single-celled organisms, decide to pack up and leave their coral host. When the temperature of the water gets too warm for them, they move out. And like we said earlier, when they leave, the coral becomes bleached. And even though we can't see changes in temperature the same way we can see changes in, say, air temperature, it's still happening. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, we have pumped a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This has caused an increase in global average temperatures. As a result, our oceans have absorbed about 90% of the excess heat that's been trapped in the lower atmosphere. The problem is that rising ocean temperatures aren't just affecting the tiny animals that live within corals. Many other sea creatures are also getting affected. Some fish are having trouble hearing each other out. Because of the increased temperature, scientists believe that many fish species are experiencing hearing loss. Their hearing abilities are seriously suffering because of ocean warming. Fish like us use our ears to hear, well, sounds in our environment. It helps us find food, communicate with others, and avoid predators. It's important to our survival. Fish have a structure in their head called the inner ear that contains fluid. When sound waves pass through the water, they hit this fluid and cause vibrations. Those vibrations get picked up by hair cells that are similar to those in our ears. Then these cells send signals to the brain, which interprets them as sound. In a study published in April of 2022, researchers exposed several species of fish to ocean temperatures that were projected for the future. They found that fish from both the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere experienced hearing loss at temperatures predicted for the year 2100. One fish that was studied was the bluegill. These fish were exposed to 3 different temperatures: 16 degrees Celsius, which is their normal temperature, 22 degrees Celsius, which is 36 higher than normal, and 28 degrees Celsius, which is 47 higher than normal. At the higher temperatures, the fish struggled to hear sounds at the same volume as fish at the normal temperature. Basically, their hearing was totally off. It isn't just their hearing that was affected either. At 28 degrees Celsius, only 1 out of 8 bluegills survived, and the fish that did survive were smaller than normal. When the team looked at the inner ear tissue under a microscope, they noticed that the hair cells were broken down at the higher temperatures. Overall, the study showed that rising ocean temperatures not only make it harder for fish to hear, but also affects their survival and growth. Even if you're not a fan of fish, you should probably care about this. That's because fish are the main source of protein for more than 1 billion people. So if something happens to them, that could impact the whole human population. If rising ocean temperatures continue, this could affect how much fish we have to eat. And since fish hearing is important for their survival, losing this ability could threaten their populations. However, there is hope for these little guys. In a recent study, researchers found a way to potentially reverse coral bleaching. Of course, we know that when corals become bleached, they lose their color and can't make their own food. But in this study, scientists found a way to add nutrients to the water that allowed the coral to survive even after they became bleached. In order to do this, they needed to figure out what nutrients the coral needed. Normally, the algae living in the coral produce their own food. But when they leave, the coral no longer has access to these nutrients. By figuring out which nutrients were missing, scientists could add them back into the water and potentially save the coral. They grew 3 different types of coral under 4 different conditions. The first was a control group that received no added nutrients. The next 2 groups received one of 2 nutrient blends. The 4th group received neither nutrients nor the algae. This group served as a model for naturally bleached coral. After 10 weeks, the control group and the groups that received one of the 2 nutrient blends had all recovered. Meanwhile, the 4th group didn't recover at all. Not only did the coral in the first 3 groups regain their algal symbionts, but they also started reproducing. That means that not only did they survive, but they were also able to create more coral. Since corals reproduce both sexually and asexually, this was a good sign that they were healthy and would continue to grow. And it wasn't just one type of coral that benefited from these nutrients. Scientists tested 3 different types, and all of them regained their algae symbionts. Right now, the team is working on creating a product that can be used in open ocean waters to save corals. While this is good news, it's important to remember that every time you add something to the ocean, you could be affecting other things. So while saving coral is great, it's still important to figure out why they're becoming bleached in the first place. And that comes back to rising ocean temperatures. If we want to help animals like coral and fish thrive, we need to find ways to reduce carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. Humans burning fossil fuels is the main reason for the increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So if we can find alternative energy sources, we can keep more of these little guys in the ocean. It's hard to imagine life without electricity. We use it for so many things that it's difficult to picture living without it. But fossil fuels aren't the only way to generate power. Instead of using coal or natural gas, we can turn to renewable sources such as wind, solar, and hydropower. Wind turbines harness the energy in moving air. Solar panels capture the energy in sunlight, and hydropower uses the energy of moving water to generate power. All of these methods have been around for a while, but we're constantly improving on them. For example, scientists have found a way to improve the efficiency of solar cells. In most solar cells, silicon is used as the semiconductor. This is a material that converts light into electricity. The thing is, silicon doesn't absorb visible light very well. Most of the light that hits a solar panel gets reflected, but scientists have created a new type of solar cell that absorbs more light, meaning it generates more power. This new solar cell uses perovskite as the semiconductor. This is a cheaper material that also absorbs more light than silicon. Researchers developed a device that stacks layers of silicon and perovskite. The silicon absorbs the infrared light, and the perovskite absorbs the visible light. Together, they convert about 80% of the light that hits them into electricity, which is more than double the amount converted by regular solar cells. Since solar cells convert sunlight into electricity, we can use them to power homes and even entire cities. This is a big deal because right now, less than 3% of the world's energy comes from the sun. With better solar cells, more of us could ditch fossil fuels and turn to solar power. Click here to watch this video we did on why frogs are disappearing, or click here to watch this video. As always, this has been your host. Don't forget to keep on thinking. Hi, this is from the channel. So why are corals going black? You know, like here, the corals have gone black. They're normally white or beige or something. Why are they going black now? That's what we'll talk about today. The Great Barrier Reef is in a bad state. And when I say bad, I mean very bad. I used to work there as a scientist many years ago, and I am sad to see that it's not doing well at all. So let's have a look. Check this out. This is coral bleaching. And my friend sent me this pic of a huge coral colony in the northern Great Barrier Reef. It's totally black. So, what happened? These corals got bleached a while back and eventually died. Instead of just turning into a jelly blob, they actually absorbed more calcium carbonate, which ended up killing them. What you're seeing is dead coral tissue piled up inside. Today, let's dive into something super cool. Coral now. Before you get confused, it's not a rock, even though some folks might say that. And it's definitely not a plant, even if it kinda looks like one. Coral is an animal. Each little coral polyp is its own creature, living in the calcium carbonate shells they build. They come in all sorts of shapes, like branching or mushroom corals, or even ones that look like fingers. Remember, coral reefs are made up of many different organisms hanging out together. Corals are made up of tiny animals called polyps, which are like little anemones with mouths waiting for food. Each polyp builds a calcium carbonate shell, creating the reef structure. But they're not alone. There are also worms, sponges, sea stars, sea urchins, and crustaceans hanging out. The cool thing is, corals don't mind sharing their space since most of these critters eat algae and plankton instead of munching on each other. It's a win-win for everyone. This sharing of space is especially handy when you're trying to survive in a place where there's not much food around. When there